So cultural taboos have always been interesting because, in my opinion, there are a fair few of them that do have validity behind them, and they're in place for a reason. There's like a very valid reason for them to exist, and then there are a plethora of them which you look at and then you're like, yeah, I have no idea why that exists. So for an example of each, I think the taboos that exist around body shaming are entirely valid, whereas the taboos that exist around mental health aren't.
Okay, what makes you say
Yeah, in
that?
fact, body
I think that's a
shaming.
little controversial, don't you think?
Yeah, in fact,
Okay.
body
Why
shaming
not
can
mental
also
health
cause
issues?
mental health issues.
Yeah.
It can, but I think that generally people's health should be very, very important to them. And there are a lot of people who just prefer food over everything else. I would know. I've been there. It was fun. I hated it. Absolutely. And I appreciate each and every person who called me very fat, the people who told me that the only shape that I had was circular. I appreciated the people who told me that I would die at 30 because of diabetes and obesity and sugar. And yeah, they were good for me. And I
So,
genuinely
body shaming
appreciated
is
them.
not about something, you are just objectifying a fat person. It's also, it can be you are objectifying a slim person, that why you're so
Yeah.
slim or something.
Yeah,
And
I've been
that,
there because I had really bad
because
health
nobody's
problems and
happy
I
with,
lost a lot
other
of
person.
weight.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, are you not eating anything?
वो ही होता है ना कि आप बहुत पतले
Yeah.
हो तो they'll be like,
What
oh my
has
god,
done
तुम
to your
कुछ
face,
खाती
or
नहीं हो,
it's
if
like
you're too
that.
fat, be like,
What
lose
I've
some weight.
learned in
Like,
our
people aren't
society is
satisfied.
that कोई भी किसी को किसी हाल पे छोड़ता नहीं है इंसान किसी
Yeah,
हाल पे
no
छोड़ता
one will ever
Yeah.
leave you.
If you're too fat,
Yeah.
That's bad.
ends
If
for
you're
you,
too skinny,
it
that's
just
too
pushes
bad as
people
well.
towards
Yeah.
an eating disorder,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think the idea behind what he was trying to get at was the fact that people need this push, especially if they're pursuing more of an unhealthy lifestyle. It's not about putting someone down or bullying them, being condescending, but telling them, hey, look, it's not about being too fat or being too thin.
You can
It's like anyone could be
I
subject to
agree,
this.
ठीक है, like if you're trying to push the other person to help get better and everything, I get that. लेकिन एक तरीका भी फिर होता है ना.
No, absolutely.
exactly
And I
what
don't
I'm
support the
Yeah.
idea of, like, sure, I appreciate the people who are like, you are more circular than anything else. I do. But generally, I don't think that's the way that people should go about it.
and
You
plus
should.
there's also like a limited amount of people who can have that kind of access to you. Like your parents saying that is fine, right? But your extended family, तुम्हारी मामी की चाची की ताई की बेटी
I
आगे कह
think
रही
we
है, that's
cannot
not okay.
Yeah.
pass uncertain comments to anyone, because maybe everybody
And I
is
feel
going
like
through
it's not
different
just
experiences
weight as
in
well.
life,
It's
and
also
different
your skin
situations.
color.
Yeah.
I come from a
color.
Pashtun family and for
Yeah.
them I'm not too gora enough. And सब मुझे यही like प्यार ये तो कहते हैं कि मुझे प्यार से बुलाते हैं but they call me काली बुलबुल
Yeah,
and
colorism is
काली
very prevalent. in
Tura
our
in
society.
Pashto.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
agree
just like,
with-
why?
I agree with
And
that.
I actually
Yeah.
love the really
Just,
dark
yeah.
skin. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but they didn't make me feel good for that. They're like, oh नहीं इस तरह नहीं होना
I mean,
चाहिए.
मेरे साथ हुआ like my brother, he is a lot more dark skinned than what me and my sister are. So everyone's like kind of like, yeah, what happened to him? But that's just the way he is. There's no
Yeah.
question why is someone the way they are.
Yeah.
This is an idea instilled, I think, in all of the subcontinent, where
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
just saying,
especially,
yeah, and like there's so many whitening treatments and whitening
Yeah.
creams,
Whitening
and
injections.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
that's also causing a lot of health problems.
Exactly.
We get
Yeah.
ये लगा लो, वो
Yeah.
लगा लो.
Yeah.
This
Do you not ever see the ads on our TVs where they're like, oh, whitening
And they're
cream.
cancerous.
Yeah, and they're cancerous as well.
Exactly.
Whitening creams and now apparently with your Fair and Lovely है, they've now labeled it as Glow
Glow
and
and
Lovely.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Because
And
it's
it's
very
really- that's
front
the
and
one
center.
show that
But
I
if we're
look
being honest over here, they're still trying to tell everyone कि नहीं गोरा होना चाहिए.
Yeah.
Glow and Lovely. Like
And it's
glow
funny
में
because
गोरा is hidden in that.
the rest of the world just wants a tan skin,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we naturally have
It's like
that.
everyone
We
wants what
naturally
they don't
Yeah.
have. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's true.
But then about the mental health thing, I feel like that's also really important. Because as someone who's had like really bad anxiety and stress, I
Shocking.
feel like yeah.
And even
I feel like it's taking a toll on my health as well because I had really bad stomach problems because of it for like more than a year. And it was really tough for me and my family because I just couldn't like relax and I could not get better because मेरा दिमाग सुकून में नहीं होता था. Obviously, I just couldn't recover. So I feel like people need to understand that. ठीक है, mental health है लेकिन ये कि then when it starts affecting your physical health, that's where it gets really bad.
And even mental
Yeah.
health itself, like people, it's very easy for people to say, just go
Yeah.
get up and do this, or like it's just
Oh,
anxiety.
you need a distraction. Or
and
ये
what is
कर
this?
लो.
It's just a drama.
Yeah.
maybe, or
And something I
like
feel
that.
like जो एक और भी है, if like someone's mental health is bad, be like, oh, I'm taking therapy.
Yeah.
I feel like even
Yeah.
therapy
And when you
It
tell
sounds
someone
very
who has a
bad,
district,
you know.
and
It's
when you
someone
also-
trying to fix their mental well-being. I don't know why also in our society therapy is seen as something so negative.
Yeah.
Like it's professional
Even
help.
when people get prescribed with antidepressants, वो कहते हैं कि किसी को बताना नहीं है कि तुम antidepressants
yeah.
ले रही हो.
And even if
Because
you
लोग क्या
suggest
सोचेंगे
someone
कि
to
ये
seek a
पागल है,
doctor, they
which is so
also
messed up.
think that you are just
नहीं हम
one
ठीक
of
हो
them or
जाएंगे
something.
कुछ
Yeah.
which is
Uh,
not the
the thing
actual
is,
way to
there's
do
a
it.
slightly different perspective on this, which is that you shouldn't always be reliant on other people in order to find change or betterness in your life. The reason that many Desi parents, okay, so I had slightly different upbringing. Therapy wasn't exactly frowned upon, nor was it like the best thing in the world. But the idea was generally that before you go and you seek a therapist to tell you what changes you should make to your life, you should experiment a bit. you
Like
know?
exhaust
Yeah.
every other resource.
Right,
before
like
you-
try things
Yeah,
out
that-
before you go the therapy route.
Yeah.
And I do think that I support therapy. I think that people who need it should get it. But at the same time, I do think that it's not something that should be the first option, and it's not something that should be as ingrained in any given culture as it is slowly becoming. Go out, experience life, see if that works for you,
Yeah.
see if it
Yeah.
changes anything, and then if it doesn't, then absolutely go for
Yeah.
therapy. It shouldn't have the stigma that it does, but it
Yeah.
also shouldn't be the first option.
I
that
think
everyone
in
I
the
has.
same
can agree
vein-
with also what he said that therapy should not be the first option.
Hmm.
That I 100% agree
In the
with
same
that.
vein, because the more the talk about mental health it becomes commonplace, more and more people learn about it, and then every other, especially because on social media, if you open Instagram or if you're on Twitter, whatever, TikTok especially, you'll see every single mental health being what's it called, a disorder being put
Yeah.
forward. Oh, you
Yeah.
might have ADHD or you might
Yeah.
have depression, and so you just immediately look at that and your first thought is, oh, I might have ADHD, even though you're not diagnosed. You're self-diagnosing yourself, which is wrong. So
And then it's also justification. Oh, I
yeah,
can't-
for your bad
yeah,
behavior,
exactly.
exactly.
There's
For the bad
justification, there's overdiagnosing, and there's also the fact that many people have started to glorify having mental health as well.
Yeah.
Like, they've started to romanticize it, right? If you have this certain condition, then it is becoming more and more popular. There's actually this psychological condition called Munchausen by proxy, where a
Right.
parent will pretend that their child is perpetually sick just so that they can continue to get attention. It's an actually diagnosed thing. And I feel like the more and more
So
mental
that
health,
they could have their children's attention? The parents?
so that the parents could have the attention that other people are giving to their child.
Yeah,
So-
special treatment essentially.
Special treatment.
Oh.
So it's this really weird thing,
Yeah.
but this tends to come about as long as mental health gets romanticized or glorified, which
They
is also
tend to
something that shouldn't happen.
sensationalize their incapabilities. Oh, I can't do this because, well,
But
I have
also it
so-and-so
has
mental
existed,
Weaponizing
we just have a
complex.
name for it now.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that mental health has a very, very specific space in which it should exist. It shouldn't be something that is too glorified. It shouldn't be something that is stigmatized. It should be a tool that people use when they need to use it and nothing else. Therapy.
Excess of everything is bad at the end of the
Absolutely.
day,
Absolutely. And
It's kind of like having any other disease. It's like if you have diabetes, you're obviously going to monitor your medication and like your blood sugar levels and all of that. So
I feel like
Naturally.
placebo
Yeah.
also comes into play here because the more you try to internalize something,
Yeah.
the more the content that you consume, if you're primarily consuming content pertaining to mental health and disorders and why you should do this and why you might have this particular disorder, you might feel like you have said disorder when in reality you don't. So you start behaving in certain ways.
and that's going to ruin your life in multiple other ways, which people don't
Exactly.
actually end up realizing.
Exactly.
So yeah, it is very, very important that the boundaries around mental health and therapy specifically are set in place as they should be. But I feel like we as a people,
And if it's not treated properly, then it brings other
Yeah.
health issues and all other problems.
Yes.
And if somebody distance themselves because of mental health, so people again started just maybe judging them that why they are just keeping distance because they don't want to maybe show their bad behavior or an anger problem to anyone. So they should understand that there is certain type of phase which one is going through. So I think this should be the main issue that need to be catered in today's time because everybody is facing a lot of difficulties. Like students have exam pressures. Young people are unemployed. They have like income pressures. Parents have different sort of pressures. So everybody can go to the level of other person and understand their issue. And if they cannot help them, so it's better to stay quiet rather
of
than
course,
creating
having
more
empathy
issues.
is
For
important.
Yeah.
Right,
And
yeah.
everybody also has.
Yeah.
empathy isn't exactly a
Yeah.
Southeast Asian strong suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
yeah. So
True.
this is the issue.
But naturally, I think that it is. Why though? Like, why is it something that we as a people tend to lack? The ability to understand the condition that other people have gone through? And why do we always tend to gravitate towards the idea that, hey, this happened to me, so now I need to do it to other people?
It comes
I
from
feel like we don't break the cycle. Like I've
Why?
seen that.
and it comes
It's
from a
just-
victim mindset.
Because
Yeah.
we're comfortable in
Yeah.
our reality. And it's the sense of familiarity where breaking out of it feels so foreign to you that you're just comfortable in this own the bubble that you've created, as toxic as it is. So
And I think
just gets passed down
self-correction is more
generation to
important.
generation.
Yeah.
But how do you get self-correction in a society where everyone is so hell-bent on continuing the toxic cycles they've been put in?
It's very long-term process.
Honestly,
you have
as trite as it is, you
continuous,
start from yourself
you have to do
within.
continuous work on it.
I have a feeling maybe our generation
And-
might break the cycle. Because we have so much awareness and we
And
actually talk
I
about
feel like
it
it's
so
still
openly.
very. We don't even
Yeah.
And
know
I
if we
think
can break
different
the
Yeah,
class
but I mean,
structure,
we're
the
still
way
talking
that
about it. I
where
feel like
it's
that's the
around,
first step,
So-
we are talking, so.
In different class structure, people take it differently. If we talk about the levels of society,
Yeah.
in upper class, people take it a little serious, maybe because it's kind of some fashion thing. Maybe if somebody's, on antidepressants or they are having depression thing, or in the middle class, okay, they are just normal as they are.
But that's the aspect of affordability at the same time,
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
therapy isn't that accessible to
Of course, if you don't
everybody.
have food, you're not
And
going to want
if you
medication,
talk about
therapy
lower
itself is
middle
quite
class or
extortionate.
low income
Kendrick
class, so
Lamar's
then
music is
they
literally free.
don't even have access to basic health facilities. So how can they afford some expensive things? So it's I think the government or social welfare organizations' duty to mobilize the issue and work on that.
I would slightly disagree for a country such as Pakistan. So if you took the US or you took the UK,
Yeah.
then I'd have a lot more confidence in a governmental organization to deal with these things. But when you take any social welfare organization in Pakistan, I just don't have the confidence that they would treat a subject as sensitive as
I
this
agree.
in a
Yes,
competent manner.
Yeah.
True.
Plus,
Yeah.
it's not even the most important issue if you look at it that way. Like in
Yeah.
our country, where people do not get to eat and do not have a roof over their head,
Yeah.
they don't want therapy. They want food. They
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
So like giving them therapy.
I mean,
is
start
not
with the
anybody.
basic needs and then
And then they'll
important
figure out
stuff.
what we need.
Not that I'm saying that mental health isn't important. It is.
But like if you compare it to
खाने को कुछ नहीं है और
Exactly.
पीने को
Oh, I
think people
ऐसा
over there,
वैसा।
the last thing
Yeah.
about
But what
mental
do you
health.
guys think that what is the main issue behind this mental health issue? Like what creates a mental health issue?
There's so many factors.
It's
Like what?
this
Also-
in this society you get on and
Generational
on.
trauma, it
passed
might
down.
be a terrible childhood.
Childhood, yeah.
Before any of that, there was actually something that I wanted to talk about before, where you mentioned that the class structure often tends to deal with how therapy
Yeah.
is viewed differently. I find it really interesting because in Pakistan, it kind of seems like the richer you are, if you ever come up and you're like, I have mental health issues, the immediate response that you get from people isn't going to be, hey, that sounds really rough, you should seek therapy. It's like, you're so privileged, what do you have to
Yeah.
worry about?
Yeah.
They're
And-
so rich.
Like, there are plenty of people that I know from upper class families, from wealthy, privileged families, who, the kid's like, hey, I'm dealing with this because they're more aware of the situation. And then the parents just like, I've given you everything. What issue do you have?
But
Yeah,
this
exactly.
comes from economic disparity, right? Because there's like so many poor
And
people.
maybe
so
they are
much,
getting
right? And then
everything, but
there's
not
envy.
getting
obviously.
I'm
appropriate
trying to-
time
so,
or care
for-
they deserve from
And I feel like they
parents,
also make you feel bad for expressing it because what I've listened is like, oh nee, like तुम्हारे पास ये तो है, you should be grateful. There are people out there who are in worse situations, and I'm like, you know what, I get that. Like
We shouldn't trivialize
Yeah.
people's problems.
And I feel like because
Trauma
of that, you
habits.
keep on bottling up your feelings because you're always scared कि अच्छा अगर मैं कुछ बोलूँगा तो यार ऐसे यही कहेगा कि no, you should be grateful because there are people out there with worse problems, and then you just
Yeah.
bottle up, and then it makes the situation worse for you because then it just gets. too
When
much.
it's like when people say that people out there have more problems, some worse
Yeah.
situations as compared to, it's like people might have them, but I'm also a person. I can have my
Yeah.
own problems, which is like I don't get कि इसके पास भी ये problem मसले हैं, वो मसले हैं, but everyone
And I
has it
think
different.
the more civilized or educated you are, the more the burden of society you have on your shoulders. Because if we see there are like many educated women who are highly qualified, but after marriage they are not allowed to work or
Yeah.
continue
is a
with their
major
goals. So
problem.
that also create a disturbance in the
I
family
think
life
this is-
and
I feel like this is a
mental health
discussion you
issues,
should have
you know?
before marriage. Like when you're marrying someone, you need to talk about this. I remember before doing LLB, I used to go to this academy for my MD-CAT because I wanted to be a doctor. And wahan pe, I remember this one sir of us, he was telling us, he's like, I know girls who've been to colleges like King Edward and Aga Khan, graduated, amazing doctors, they get married and they stop working because their husbands have a problem with it. And then they're like, at least don't take the opportunity away from girls who actually want to work after they get married. Matlab, aap phir unka seat bhi le
it
lekte ho.
happens to
And then
one
you
of my
and
childhood
then
friends
waste your
even,
parents'
you know.
money. They pay so much, and then baad mein you just don't end up working. Why? Because a man doesn't want you to work. Like,
But this is the main problem with
Yeah.
the society, that this is, disturbing, the whole family system,
Yeah.
And I think this is because of maybe a family structure we are having, maybe a husband wants to support his wife, and maybe the family values doesn't allow.
sometimes
And-
men also tend to
Envious, I think.
because
Yeah.
kabhi ye bhi hota hai कि if the wife is earning more,
Or maybe
Yeah.
she's more
thoda
successful,
sa
or
wo
she
guy-
has more
They-
potential.
it's
to
very,
go
they have a very fragile ego.
along.
They
You
get hurt
mentioned
by that.
how
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
also
Real.
the
What was the
biggest
actual-
mental issue in men these days. I
you actually
just,
mentioned how
realized.
what was the actual cause behind the fact that there's so much mental illness prevalent. I feel
Yeah.
like the reason being, one of the factors actually, is the fact that most families overlook their, for lack of a better word, mentally ill sons, get them married off because now it's
BB
the
ki kai
wife's,
lagi.
yeah, it's the
I've-
wife's responsibility.
Yeah,
and
and
that's
you know,
like,
and
if
if a
that's how
son-
the cycle then
If a son has
continues after.
I've actually seen this.
Because he takes it out on
Yeah.
wife.
I don't want to get into too much detail, but
But
I've seen
as you say that they should just clarify before getting married. But
Yeah.
in some situations, I realize that people often know each other goals, but still after marriage, they change suddenly.
I've also seen.
I think that's also
in many
like,
families here in Pakistan, मैंने
Yeah.
खुद देखा हुआ है कि a son will have a drug problem or something, and they'll be like, शादी करवा दो, कोई मसला नहीं, उससे वो ठीक हो
ठीक
जाएगा.
हो जाए.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what this is.
Even men who aren't over their ex, they're like,
And-
you know what, शादी करा दो, it's okay, he'll get over her and he'll be perfectly fine. No, women, you should not
And
use
if
women
you
as a
have anger
band-aid
issues or
solution
something,
for
so they
problems
will-
like this.
Yeah.
Women are in rehabilitation.
हम ये नहीं कह रहे,
centers,
like I think it goes
See,
both
that's the
ways.
thing that's
Like,
traditional,
हम ये नहीं कह रहे कि perfect
yeah.
हो हमारा partner. Everyone has flaws, I get that. लेकिन अगर इतनी major problems हैं, like drug problems or them not being over someone, and then you're making your partner feel miserable for something they haven't even done, I feel like that's really
This comes from a
unfair.
lack of awareness
Yeah.
because औरतों को उनके हुकूक बताए नहीं
Yeah,
जाते हैं, उनकी
yeah.
शादी करा दी, वो अपना
Yeah.
निकाह नामा भी नहीं देखते.
Yeah.
And I
They
think
literally
most
just
of the
sign
time,
off, right?
men are judgmental about women's even past and all things,
Yeah.
So I think we made wrong decisions about getting or choosing a right partner.
Yeah.
So that's more important to be clear on these
I
terms.
feel like in our
before-
society we really need to
yeah.
work on the fact that women are not band-aid solutions for your son's problems, and we're not, and marriage is not an experiment. ये नहीं है
Yeah.
कि बस,
Because you have
maybe
to
it'll
grow
work
your
out.
family, and a
Yeah.
family you have to grow.
ठीक
a
है,
nation,
ऐसे होता है.
yeah.
There are cases where in the start everything is perfect and you feel like you found the perfect partner, और बाद में it doesn't work out, वो फिर like किस्मत की बात
And
होती है.
this
लेकिन-
and these differences and these issues, these are transferred into childs.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Yeah, children get traumatized.
The
by
way
that.
the parents are always will affect the children no
And this is
matter
the
Yeah,
what.
no matter
generational
what.
thing that I was
That's
talking
what is
about.
a
That's
generational
why the
trauma.
cycle-
And then उसी से फिर then
Yeah.
children
And the
get like
cycle is
mental health
developed,
problems and everything. It's like वो chain है
It's
ना.
a perpetual
Yeah.
cycle.
Like
Yeah.
you were talking about like how women like शादी के बाद काम नहीं करने देते.
Yeah.
That's also like traditional वही है ना कि बस लड़की की शादी कर रहा हो and she should like वो pay the domestic role, just be there for her husband and बस बच्चों का
Yeah.
But
ख्याल
how
रखे
can-
घर
Or
चलाए.
that
Yeah,
if
but
you're
how
a
can
working
they
woman, you
expect-
can't be a good mother and a good wife.
Right.
But how can they expect from a woman who is educated enough and who have worked hard, throughout her life, and they want her to sit in the house, So then they have to choose some lady who is not that
I mean,
educated.
technically speaking,
Yeah, or something.
what's the harm? Like, if you have, शोहर पाल रहा है तो क्यों नहीं? Who doesn't? Like,
Okay,
which one of
I'm
us?
sorry, I'm just gonna chime in
Yeah.
and I'm gonna phrase that slightly differently because I actually agree.
Yeah.
But the idea is that if a person chooses to do whatever, then they should have the free will to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you want to be a
Yeah.
stay-at-home wife, be a stay-at-home wife. If you want to be a working parent, be a working parent. That's fine. The general issue is when you start forcing or enforcing these general norms or ideas where no, you have to be a stay-at-home wife. No, the wife has to earn. You have to do this. the idea of choice is by far
But
the most
according to
important
our
not
thing.
religion
about-
and
yeah.
even the country we live in, technically a wife is supposed to listen to her husband. So if a husband doesn't want her wife going out, she should.
No, but it's not
People
about,
live in the world.
who
In
is
this day
feeding
and age,
you.
it's just.
It's not about the day and age. It's like the culture, the
My
society.
feeling
that
is-
we're
Why would you
in.
want to take
But I
that
feel
choice
like in
away
our
from
culture,
women particularly?
Can our moms just stand up to our dads and say that I'm not gonna listen to you?
My
Then
mom-
why are
my
you
dad is
no,
a-
Yeah, dad listens to my mom.
You have to make bigger decisions. Like
I think you're
is your
getting
mom
our
gonna-
point wrong. We are not just talking about
My household is more
standing in front
matriarchal.
of
I will
our
say
partner
that
saying-
because my mom is the man of the house.
Yeah,
That
same.
isn't to say
Same.
that
My
my
mom's
dad
the man of
is.
the house.
that is
strict
what
of
I've
his-
seen growing
Any
up.
decision, my mom has to approve first.
I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. I get where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, it's about someone having that choice.
It's about
Would you be
working
having
together,
your
Kids
you know?
do
choice?
get
Yeah.
neglected if a mother works, and that's undeniable.
Why isn't the dad helping out too?
It's
Yeah.
because
Because
it's
he's
not
working
your
out.
partner.
Listen,
If he's
a
working a
mom
9 to
is
5
not
job,
your
he should
partner.
come home and also like play his role as a
I
parent.
feel like people tend to misunderstand the fact that just because a woman is a stay-at-home wife, mother, she's not working. She's at home working. That is a job in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
10
This
times
is
harder
harder.
than
It's
what the
the
man is
biggest
doing
job
out
in the
there.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
a
a
job.
job.
So just because he's coming back home tired doesn't mean that he can't contribute to a few tasks.
Right?
towards
So
it.
a woman
Yeah.
should stay at home and look after her kids.
Obviously,
Not necessarily.
obviously when she's working
Okay.
out, she's looking after outside and the house as well. And if she's balancing both the structure, so why couldn't
I
she?
think I feel
So she
It's
needs
not a
more
one-man
support,
show is
yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
trying to say because those
Yeah.
are just as much his kids as they are her
Her
kids.
kids.
So
Yeah.
why isn't he
But
helping out?
in the end, she's also human, you know. So she has her own life maybe.
True.
So we need
Absolutely.
to.
I think
yeah.
it's important for everyone to remember the fact that marriage is always going to be a partnership, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
And-
need to support each other.
Which is why the idea of, one partner, be it the man, it's typically the man, but be it the man or the woman, having a final say on anything is not something that sits particularly well with me. Sit down, have a conversation about it. See where you agree, see where you disagree, see where both of you can compromise and where you can't, and then make a decision about it together. But at the same time, I also do kind of agree with her. I think that as the world becomes more and more of a place where the parents are both working and the children are left to be nurtured by other people, let's say it's daycare, let's say it's school, let's say it's by their grandparents, I feel like the parents are going to have less and less of a connection with their children,
Yeah.
and so that's going to come out and affect them.
It's very important for a child to have a connection with their parents.
This is
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
to say that necessarily, women have to be the ones to stay at home. I don't have an objection with men who stay at home either.
Yeah.
But I do generally think that if one parent is working full time, then it is a better idea for the other parent to work part time.
It
So
comes
that
down
the
to the
children get-
dynamics of everyone's
Absolutely.
relationship, their marriage. So
Absolutely. Which again ultimately comes down to two more ideas, which is the first, you should have choice in whatever decisions you make. And the second is that you should talk these things through before marriage.
exactly.
Yeah.
Do not get into a relationship or a marriage with someone who you think,
And what if somebody changes after marriage? Then
well, then the game is game, that's kind of
That's just your luck.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually,
Luck or
in that
maybe bad
instance,
luck,
you
yeah.
need to be capable enough of having these conversations thoroughly. Anytime you're talking to someone, you can generally see at least a few flaws in what they're
I think
saying.
life and people are unpredictable, so we cannot rely on
Everything in
True.
life is unpredictable.
Which is again coming back to that. You can't, especially as a woman, you shouldn't
Yeah.
feel the need to feel dependent on a man because
Yeah.
And we cannot
Being capable is
bring
one thing,
yeah.
religion
You should
into
be.
this type of conversation because there are so many other religious things that men don't follow or women don't follow. Even as a society, we don't follow. But like feeding a woman or keeping her at home, we just say if man is feeding you, then why you want to work? If there can be good thing as well. If a wife want to support or pay a good
Or
contribution.
not just support, maybe
to
just
the
want a
household,
distraction,
right?
just want to get
But
out
also,
of the
like, I
house.
feel like in this economy, like today's
And
economy,
you
have
it's
to
a
work
lot
in this
harder
thing,
not
you know?
to like
Yeah.
a double
Really.
income
Yeah.
household.
Yeah.
Like the
So-
guy's supposed to be the breadwinner,
And
but I
okay,
feel
if
like
a woman is free, she's not doing anything and she's having mental health issues because of staying free. And she wants to do something and she has certain goals in her life and that is creating, a mess in her mind and, that she's transferring to her husband, her family or to kids, she's not giving them proper time because she's mentally upset. So it's better if she's working some time or part time, and she's doing or going through with her hobbies.
absolutely, yeah.
So I think she can better perform in her marital and family life. So
Okay.
she will be feel confident and overwhelmed.
She should be
Yeah.
preoccupied
For
with
some
something
people,
productive.
working
Yeah.
can also be like a way they
Therapeutic.
can get away.
Yeah.
A getaway is therapeutic for them. Like personally, I feel like that. Like to me, that's what I feel like. I need something that keeps me busy for like keep my mind off
Yeah.
things. Which I think probably get from my
When I
mom
was on the
because my
gap year and I
mom
was
is
going
also is
insane.
like,
Now,
Yeah.
I mean, ठीक है uni में there are so many assignments and I'm going crazy आजकल लेकिन
Yeah.
फिर भी at least I'm busy.
I'm
Yeah, there's
focused on
something-
one
घर से
thing
बाहर
only,
निकलती
not
हूँ, at
focused
least
on
not,
10
yeah.
million different things that come my
Because
way.
perpetually rotting all day in bed gets
It's
to you.
Yeah.
Just
so
mindlessly
bad.
scrolling
Yeah.
all day.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
You know?
Even if you keep up at you just think that you should take him out. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
So even better than women, maybe you want to preserve are at home.
Right. Speaking on like.
And and the other thing I want to mention, a man, if he stops his wife not to do this or not to work, but on the other side, he's not thinking same for his daughter or sisters or his other ladies in his family. So what's the issue behind that?
ये तो हर एस्पेक्ट में मैंने नोटिस किया हुआ होता है फॉर एग्जांपल किसी का भाई बहुत ही like I said like he might have a major drug problem and everything his
Yeah.
mother will want to find a girl for him but if अगर उनकी अपनी बेटी होगी तो वो कहेंगी नहीं I want a perfect
Yeah.
husband for my daughter
Yeah.
like at least अपनी मतलब then also think
So
the same
there
for
are,
someone
like, double
else's daughter.
standards
Why
in
are
the
you only
society,
thinking
you
about
know?
your own daughter? But again, this is मतलब even I feel like जो बहुत ही educated लोग हैं, जो upper class के, वो भी इसी तरह का mindset है इन सबका. They always just I don't know. It just
Most
gets
like
sad.
अपना.
Yeah.
Up and up, like
Yeah.
this is one of the best from
Yeah.
themselves and they don't want the same for the
Yeah.
others.
So as I say, that self-correction is like more important. So we
Yeah.
should first correct ourselves, and then we should
Yeah.
pinpoint
Yeah.
on others.
And I
That's
feel
what
like
they are doing or
especially
what they are
since
not
us
doing.
girls were
It's not none of
we're
our
in a
business.
legal
Us girls.
yeah
Yeah.
तुम तो लड़के हो तुम्हारा हो जाएगा लेकिन हम
Yeah.
तो like हम तो अभी legal fraternity में आगे जाके we'll have to work in courts with
Yeah,
all
बहुत
kinds
हम
of
बोलेंगे
people.
it's like very common कि
And
बोलेंगे कि लड़की जाएगी
अभी
कोर्ट
भी when I
कचहरी में अच्छा नहीं लगेगा.
अभी भी when I tell someone कि मैं law कर रही हूँ तो they have like get this very weird expression.
How will you do
फिर
it?
court कचहरी में काम
Yeah,
करेंगे.
exactly.
And the environment is
Oh,
not
बंदा
good and
demotivate भी
it's
हो
like
जाता
that.
है like
मैंने क्या गलती कर ली
Yeah.
हमें पढ़ना है
अभी तो मैं first year में हूँ, छोड़ तो दो.
that's the
लेकिन
way
I
it
just
is.
use that as motivation to like push
Yeah.
harder though. 'Cause
मैं सबसे
why not?
senior judge बन के दिखाऊंगी then
Yeah.
you like
Yeah.
ऐसे करके.
The good thing is that you have a change in the newer generation, right? We
Yeah.
don't have those very same values. We aren't exactly in a position to make a lot of change into the world. We're not legislators, we're not politicians, we're not, the leading professionals or anything. Those are the generations that came before us. So we already talked about how therapy is kind of useless for them. There's a strong stigma. So how do we, as, the youth, teenagers, young adults, how do we go about changing the mindset that our parents have in regards to these things? In regards to taboos, in regards to stereotypes, in regards to where you work, how you should get married, how many parents should be at home at a time, all of these things. How do you go about bringing any change to these things?
I don't think there's. Okay.
I think that this is something very difficult कि कैसे mindset change करेंगे like the older generation because obviously they're also carrying down what they've been taught and बहुत पुराने ज़माने के how they've been taught which I feel like and for them it's really difficult to let go of like those traditions and everything they've inherited. इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि थोड़ा सा मुश्किल होएगा for them to like admit it कि नहीं this is modern हो गया है सब कुछ change हो रहा है. It will take time लेकिन मुश्किल से होएगा.
And most of the old people in the society, especially they are like हमारे ज़माने में ऐसा होता था तो अब ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है अब how with what was going back 50 years back
हाँ, each generation
I
has
think
followed the same
करके
structure.
दिखाना पड़ता है. It's like
so
if a girl goes out to work and her parents know कि अच्छा कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, लड़की खराब नहीं हो गई या उसके साथ कुछ बुरा नहीं हो गया something. So I think slowly they give into that.
even
so I
same
think
can
it's
happen
like
to a boy. Even boys are not safe these days in
I
our
think
society.
very slowly like
Yeah,
the
I think-
older generation.
I think it's a
every
gradual
year
process. It will take time.
It's going to take
It's
time.
not something that can happen within a
Except
day.
at
or
the same
anything.
time, it's like you can't. You can't necessarily blame them because they're at a stage in their life where they're not necessarily capable of that kind of change because that kind of thinking has become part of their being. It's like an intrinsic part of their thinking because they've grown up with it. And I feel like past the age of I'd say 40,
And maybe they don't
They're
have
not
that much
capable of-
exposure as
लेकिन ये है कि
generation
इसमें
have.
Even with
Yeah.
all the
Exposure can make a
exposure, no.
difference.
Again,
Yeah.
thing is, everyone is different.
Or maybe
they don't
I can't
want to
speak
change.
for right. That's another thing, but I can't speak for everyone's parents or
Yeah.
every other person out there.
Yeah.
What we can do is, okay, if you want to speak to your family, if they're understanding, if they're willing enough to push,
Yeah.
put that effort in, that's amazing.
Go
Happy
for
for
it.
you. But at the same time, we can't necessarily blame them because they're not capable of that change. So what we should do is work on ourselves, which is a lot harder, and work on building our own families in a more mature, healthier, non-toxic environment. So because
Yeah.
we're the next generation, they're gonna go.
Yeah.
We have to like fill in their shoes, but also like
Right.
maybe put on a different pair as well because those are. But yeah.
Yeah, and even these issues are, created a pressure on both men and female to live together in a toxic marriage, even, and that creates much problem, in upbringing the new generation, because a child who is living where a mother or a father is not happy, or they cannot see the happy environment, so how they we expect from such child that when he or she will be old or in their elder time, so how can they behave well in society? So these kind of children have mental issues, and the other criminal instincts they can develop because of having ill structure of childhood
More-
trauma.
More often than not, divorce is the best option in a lot of cases,
But
right?
the point-
Because
Yeah,
although albeit it is frowned upon in our society, but at
And
the
it
same
does
time,
tend to get messy. It's not like
Messy.
divorce is a smooth
Because a
process.
woman
Like,
is
and I
always
feel like
taught
if
to-
you're putting your children through years of just like torture and depression, कि आप हर दिन you're just watching your parents constantly argue, I feel like that's too much. I feel like उससे तो बेहतर है कि एक ही दफा बस खत्म हो जाए. At least it's
वही
over
है
then.
ना, in our like society,
Yeah,
it's
but
like
the
marriage
divorce is
has
not
to be-
acceptable in our society,
Yeah.
because then they just
But I've actually
criticize
seen
people who took divorce,
recently, like I feel
and
like
they just shame
it has
divorced,
become
single
pretty common
divorced,
now.
and even single parents or like single women out there.
Like in like
you
even
know.
after divorce, it will always be on the woman that she failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
गुजारा
And
कर लेती,
and
हमने तो
these
बहुत
days,
गुजारा किया है.
even on the
Yeah.
men, if he had one marriage or he
Yeah.
had two marriage and
Yeah.
both are divorced, then third time they will see, they will say that some problem should be have, in this man maybe. Or maybe he have like both time bad experiences, so we cannot judge.
Every time I've
know.
heard any woman talk about marriage, like मतलब in their 40s or anything, हमेशा यही कहते हैं कि marriage is all about compromise.
But
So
like in
woman
our
has to
society,
compromise.
compromise
Woman has
has
to
to be
compromise. Like they really stress on the
And
word.
mostly
Like,
they
you
say
have to
that
compromise no matter what.
10% a boy will do and 90% a girl
Yeah.
has to do. That's what I have also
And
listened.
but that compromise in our society is like शादी में compromise करोगे, you have to compromise your mental health, your
Yeah.
physical well-being, your psychological
ठीक है,
well-being,
एक point तक
everything.
compromise करना, I feel like in
कोई
every
हद तक
relationship you have to
compromise,
compromise.
yeah.
लेकिन अगर आप हर aspect में
Compromise
compromise
can't put the
करोगे,
burden on one
that's
party
toxic
only.
and it's
Yeah.
mentally
then why would you want to stay in that
damaging.
marriage? Just get out of it.
out of it.
And I feel
And
like it's-
sometimes
yeah.
divorce is also for the best,
Yeah.
exactly.
which I don't think people in society understand.
I
that
feel
divorce is
like,
also a good
just the
thing.
other day I met somebody and they were like, ऐसी कोई बात हुई, and they were like, ये तो इस्लामाबाद का कल्चर बन गया ना सिंगल मॉम्स का और डिवोर्स का, and it's just so common now, and he was just saying it in a funny way, but like if you think about it, it's actually so true. Like people actually think that it's just a trend that people are just now following, and that single moms are like just that divorce is a convenient way, so people are just taking it as an easy way
And it's
instead
not
of
about,
working
I
on
think,
their
single
marriage.
moms, it's about even people living in long distance relationship due to some, their own objectives or some things. Then people also try judging them that why they are living, distant, and why they are living alone. So that's
Even
all
living
the,
alone
yeah.
is-
I feel
That's
like
also the
अभी
issue in the society.
लेकिन अब मैं ये भी सोचती हूँ कि like हमारे अम्मी अबू के टाइम में like शादियों में the girl and the boy they wouldn't really like talk about everything before marriage. I feel like अभी हमें ये awareness है कि शादी से पहले चाहे if it's
It
arranged
more so
marriage or
like
love marriage,
a marriage
talk
with
about
the families,
everything. Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
they would
Yeah.
have an agreement.
Yeah,
and then-
but it's not. But actually, marriage is between two people because उन दोनों ने एक दूसरे के साथ 24/7 रहना. ये तो
लेकिन
नहीं है कि
but
आप
over here it's more like कि
Yeah,
खानदान
even,
की
it's
इज्जत
important
type
that
of situation.
like you need to talk
scenario.
about everything before marriage. Every
Exactly.
single.
Lekin I
thing.
feel like
even,
we talk
you know,
about
it's
everything.
important to see
Sorry,
No,
I was
it's
saying, I
okay.
feel like they talk about everything, but they will never consider the actual couple's preferences and feelings.
Yeah.
It's always the family. They have the higher say in this.
The
Yeah.
stuff that they
aspect.
talk about generally is very irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's not pertinent to the marriage or.
And it's
the
always
dynamics of
usually
it.
financial stuff.
Exactly.
Financial, or how tall is
Yeah,
it, or
yeah,
how
yeah.
fair is she,
Khandan
or-
kiss
The
Yeah,
economic
yeah.
economically how stable is
ठीक है, I get it.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
your child to get married into a family जो अच्छी decent खानदान है, ठीक है, I understand that, ठीक है. लेकिन अगर आप इतना मतलब कोई भी, I'm sorry, but no one's perfect. Like अगर आपको लगता है कि वो financially
The
बहुत strong
character
होंगे,
matters more
Yeah.
than the
or
financial.
family में everyone is a
money,
perfect
everything.
human being, like no, it's not that. हर family में there are different kinds of people. कुछ बहुत अच्छे होंगे, कुछ बहुत बुरे होंगे. And you have to just get over it. You can't just be like नहीं, मेरी बेटी ने तो perfect उससे शादी करनी, क्या मतलब? That's unfair.
It's for enough.
And then your daughter ends up getting married to another person and she's unhappy. फिर वो गिला तो होता है ना दिल में कि ये क्यों हुआ?
There's also too many unrealistic expectations. Everywhere.
Yeah, unrealistic
Which
ones,
is-
Wait, I'm actually
And, you
curious
know,
about something.
okay,
yeah.
What's one tradition, everyone, that you support, and what's one tradition that you are against?
Support.
Because like so far in this conversation, मुझे ये vibe आ रही है कि everyone is generally against the traditional approach. So I'm curious
No,
to
we
see if
are
there's
not
any leeway
Against
here.
the traditional approach.
It's the
we are
misuse
just
of the tradition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in light of that, what's one
that
traditional thing that is good
where
and
it's
one
your
that's bad?
benefit, you can use the traditional approach, and when it's the benefit of other person, you can just go against that approach. So
Yeah.
we are just talking about this disparity
Again,
going
so
through in the
what's
society.
one tradition that you think is a good thing that should be continued? And we've had like 4 examples of ones that are bad, but another one would be.
I think the way person wants to live, because everybody is sensible and mature enough these days. Even a child of 6 years old, they know everything. So we should let them live as they want to live, because they can decide they're good or bad, rather than enforcing, our own, mental desires on the others or the young generations, even on the old generations.
Or even the
Even
pressure.
sometimes kids wants
Yeah.
to change their
With
parents,
I
I think
With
what he's
academics
trying to
as
get
well.
across is that he wants everyone to state what they're in favor of.
Yeah, yeah.
Which,
Well, this-
which
yeah, yeah.
aspect
I
they're in
think
favor
divorce
of.
being looked down upon is not entirely bad, because
It's
like
not.
the
Yeah.
जो एक वो है कि बड़े बूढ़े बैठ कर बात करके they want to
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
problem to be
Solve.
at least talked about,
Because
the sons
I
getting
think context
involved.
should be the
Exactly.
last resort instead of like
Exactly.
abruptly making a decision.
So
कि
like
बस
the
I'm gonna end
elders
this
getting
marriage.
involved and like just trying to talk stuff through and
Yeah.
like not letting it happen right away is maybe not just a bad.
There's
thing.
also lack of communication as well. 'Cause
Yeah.
Exactly,
nobody
and I
talks
think
about
they
it.
help
That's the main
mediate
issue.
that.
Yeah.
Behind
Or
that.
instead of lack of communication, it's more lackadaisical communication
Yeah.
because it's not, it's not translating.
Yeah.
It's not even just communication, it's comprehension of said
Yeah.
communication.
And sometimes just two people are just too mad at each other to be able to talk to them.
Yeah.
So like intervention is not necessarily bad.
True.
कभी-कभी जिद भी आ जाती है बीच में.
Well, anyway.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're done.
Yeah.